A spokesperson for Senator Ted Cruz tells me he has tested negative and is not showing any COVID-19 symptoms after interacting with Senator Lee earlier this week. But Senator Cruz is planning to stay at home out of an abundance of caution. I reached out to staffers of both Senators Ted Cruz and John Cornyn and specifically asked if they'd tested positive for the coronavirus and when they last received a test. A spokesperson for Senator Cornyn did not acknowledge those questions at all, but says Cornyn was not at the White House last Saturday with the president, as many of these other senators were. That seemingly a reference to Saturday's Rose Garden ceremony for the nomination of Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court. Several people who attended, including Senator Mike Lee of Utah and Senator Thom Tillis of North Carolina, have since tested positive for the coronavirus. Cornyn's press team says the senator has not interacted recently with any of the senators who have tested positive. However, 5 days after the Rose Garden ceremony,
under the Ginsburg rule,
Cornyn and Lee attended the same Senate Judiciary meeting in person Thursday morning.
Was the way that the FBI handled the Russia investigation.
Cruz, Cornyn, Lee, and Tillis all appeared in person the day before to question former FBI Director James Comey Wednesday morning. It's unclear if the senators had close contact, as members occasionally enter and leave the room. And the video shows senators did maintain distance from each other, though they did not wear masks while speaking.
The Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act.
Now, because of those positive cases, the Senate is expected to take a 2-week hiatus. Senator Cruz's spokesperson says he does plan to return to the Senate when the Supreme Court nomination hearings get underway. In Dallas, I'm Eric Alvarez.